the point that we really stressed to the educators was that good teaching and learning is still good teaching and learning, regardless of your geographic location. And these were our top 5 tips for educators in our school, and we shared these with parents and with the students. The first one then is, of course, to present information to the students that's new in very small chunks. We know that students are likely going to be cognitively overloaded with everything that's going on around them in their environment. And it's really important then, looking at the research from Rosenshine and cognitive load theory, to make sure that we're advantaging, I think is the best word I can use there, our learners by not overloading their working memory, and providing that new information in really small steps and giving them lots of guided practice to help break down concepts and procedures. And this is backed up from research from the Education Endowment Foundation, alongside Rosenshine's principles of instruction, cognitive load theory, dual coding theory, and so on. So that was our first hybrid learning tip for educators. Our second tip is provide worked examples. I think if you look at the research from, again, the Education Endowment Foundation on metacognition and self-regulated learning, modeling your own thinking to help pupils develop their metacognitive skills is still something that we need to develop, whether we're a face-to-face, hybrid, or blended. And that's down to the educator to decide if that should be done synchronously or asynchronously, because they know their students best. Likely, I would imagine most educators went down the asynchronous route for that, to open up other channels, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But that's hugely important, that we still maintain revealing our thought processes as the expert educators and reduce the mental demands on our learners in that hybrid context, so that the students can actually use those worked examples to continue their studying, access teacher thinking, clarify and crystallize steps and concepts in learning, much as you would in a face-to-face environment. Our third top tip was to check for understanding using low-stakes testing. And just as you yourself, Wolfgang, and David has alluded to, the new normal can be challenging enough. And I think it's really important to make sure that we don't increase those demands by providing really high stakes assessments in a hybrid learning environment for, many hopefully obvious reasons. Assessment is just a vehicle for obtaining a success rate, I think, in our students. And it's important that we do test the temperature of learning, but how you go about doing that is hugely important, because we want to encourage the students to think aloud in a non-threatening atmosphere without facing kind of grading as such, I think. So it needs to have challenge but lack threat. So how we go about that is really important in identifying clarity of thinking for students in a really safe space. So it needs to be low threat. And if I can draw on my physicist background, as Stephen Hawking once said, the cost of bad data is the illusion of knowledge. And I think that really sums up the importance of making sure that any kind of testing that you do is really low stakes for the student. Number 4 then is peer and teacher collaboration. I think this is possibly one of the most important of these 5 top tips. We need to continue to foster that sense of community and connection. It's what not only helps motivation, but it helps buy-in, it helps continuation of what normal might have been, or at least that sense of community and collaboration amongst our community, I think is the best word for that. And that's built into the very fabric of us as humans. So to neglect that, I think, is a really large error. Therefore, we need to provide as many opportunities for interactions as possible. And that might mean we take a slightly different approach then to different tasks. But that's not a bad thing. I think we need to have in our core the mindset of making sure that we motivate the students, we can improve outcomes, enable connection, collaboration, and a sense of a classroom environment, whether it be face-to-face, hybrid, or even blended, just that opportunity to connect. And then the fifth top tip, of course, is feedback. The purpose of feedback, I think, if we just draw on that for one moment, is to close the knowledge gap, move learning forwards, and therefore move our understanding forwards. And I think peer feedback in this is hugely essential. It builds on that aspect of collaboration amongst our classroom in whichever simulation you find yourself in, but it also provides the opportunity for the class to come back together again, and for the teacher to connect and collaborate, whether it's with small groups or the whole class, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. I think it's hugely important. We've seen loads of great things spawn off of that, whether it's Mote and audio feedback that's finally found its fore in education. They're great examples of things that our teachers have done, and I think teachers globally have done, that should be recognised. Good teaching and learning is still good teaching and learning.